You can bring your delicious bites and join us, please. Thank you. And by the way, I'm not an MC, I'm just saying that. And then it's over to you. I'm just going to welcome. Great. We are about to start this afternoon's exciting session. So if we can please ask everyone to have a seat. Great. I will now call on the CEO of the Africa Center, our host, to welcome us to the venue. Thank you.
All right, so we got everybody. I'll just wait for folks to sit down. Okay, well, I think we have a few people who are coming in from the back, and I will be very brief, but welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody. Welcome to the Africa Center. I think some of you were here earlier. Can anyone raise their hand? Folks who were here for the talk earlier would love to know. Okay, so we had a few folks who were here for the talk earlier. My name is Uzo Iwala, and I'm the CEO of the Africa Center, this lovely institution in which you are sitting here in New York. And I wanted to welcome you all here for this wonderful discussion that you're about to have. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay, but what I wanted to just let you know is that this house is your house. This place is a space for discussions about the future of the continent, about the major issues that we see in our lives today, both on the continent and in the diaspora, and about, most importantly, debate, discussion, and really pushing the ideas that are going to shape the continent now and in the days to come. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to welcome you here. I really just want to thank our friends and partners from IREC. So Marcia, thank you very, very much for bringing folks here. And I also want to thank the Cultural Affairs Bureau at the Department of State as well for all of the support that you give to the Mandela Fellows and of course to all of these programs, again, that help to shape the future of the continent. In a second, I will introduce Jessica Zenekos. But I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Dr. Chinio Gunro, who's our COO, who worked very hard with a team from IREX to also make this happen here today. So to all of you again, thank you very, very much. And to Jessica, a real pleasure to have you here. And I would love if you could come up and say a few words. One of the things I want to make sure just before Jessica comes up is that you guys stay in touch with us. Again, as you're here, we are a home away from home for folks and also a platform for all the ideas and the amazing work that you're doing. And we just love to have you. And thank you. So Jessica, the floor is yours.
Should have wore higher heels. So hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Zenekos. I work at the U.S. Department of State. I work exclusively on the Mandela Washington Fellowship within the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And I am just thrilled to be here today to see all of you and to hear all of the great things that you have been doing since you have been on your fellowship, whether it was from 2016 all the way up to 2023 now. And I see that on your name tags and already so happy to hear from you and see you and hear your stories. One of the things that I think the fellowship does such a fantastic job of. And what I am inspired by is all of the networking that you do with each other, and hearing the stories and the connections that you make with one another, and how that turns into new projects, new goals, new experiences. And you are really building just such a wonderful network of young people across the continent. And I'm just so happy to have some small part of that. So thank you for that. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of today. I'm so happy again to be here, and also want to thank our partners at IREX who implement the program on behalf of the State Department for putting this event together. And I look forward to chatting with you all today and hearing how things have been going since your fellowship experience. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Uzo, for, well, he's gone already. So thank you for welcoming us to your venue. Everyone, my name is Marcia Small. I'm the Deputy Project Director of the Mandela Washington Fellowship at IREX. And we are the implementing agency for the fellowship on behalf of the Department of State. And so we've been honored as IREX to implement this project for almost 10 years. In 2024, it'll be the 10-year anniversary. So we are really excited to have seen, as Jessica just mentioned, so many cohorts of fellows becoming alumni and talking about the fantastic work that you're doing over the years, just to work with you. And also, let's not forget our leadership institutes, the university partners that we work with. And we do know Rutgers is in the room. Yay, thank you, Rutgers, for being here, for being one of our long-term institute partners that we've worked with. So today is really to, as it says, it's really about amplifying African youth voices. We wanted to take advantage of this time where many of you are here in New York City for the UN General Assembly. And we thought, how can we support you and create a space where, as Jessica shared, you can network with each other, you can connect back with us as IREX and also the Department of State, and also really just identify even new ways to collaborate and innovate together. And so the Africa Center graciously agreed to co-host this event with us this afternoon. So we're really excited to be here. We'd love for you to also continue to explore the space for those of you who have an extended time in New York City. And even if you're not here again, there is a wonderful photo exhibit that's at the other entrance of the Africa Center that we encourage you to explore. But on to today's program. We are celebrating some of the voices that we've been able to gather in the room and really kind of connecting it to the UN conversations around sustainable development goals, but also to the US-Africa policy. And so on that note, I'm looking to find Chini. There's Chini. Chini is the Chief Operating Officer for the Africa Center, and she will be our moderator for today. Thank you. Chini, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. You guys sound tired. I know this is United Nations General Assembly week, but I think you can do at least a little bit better than that. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope you can all see me. Good afternoon to everybody in the room. Good afternoon to everybody who is joining us virtually online via our streaming platforms. I want to take just a brief second before our gracious fellows come up to share their stories with us to provide you with a bit of context for what it is that we're doing this afternoon. I will ask you to, if I begin to speak too quickly, just raise your hand or nudge me and say, okay, Chini, you're speaking too quickly, because sometimes the New York sets in and you can't hear enough of my Niger accent when I enunciate properly. So just to give you that there. All right, so what is it that we're doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. Has anybody ever seen, and what I'm going to do is to, as I explain what today is all about, I'm going to start to move, and you'll understand why I'm starting to move as I explain what we're doing today. So has anybody today heard of a little series called TED Talks? Raise your hand if you have heard of TED Talks. And does anybody have a favorite TED Talks? In the wonderful tan jackets, yes. The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Yes, that's a fantastic one. Another favorite TED Talk, In the Suits, the black suits. Embracing the near win. Embracing the near win. That's another good one. I haven't seen the whole thing. I've heard of it though. So what we're doing today is we're going to have, similar to the tech talks that you absolutely enjoy, we're going to have Ignite Talks. The Ignite Talks are a TED Talk-like speaking opportunity for fellows to share their projects, to share their programs, to share the work that you have been doing over the years. Up here, I will serve as your moderator, and I will introduce each of our speakers one by one with their name, their country, and their year. And we will give them approximately 7 minutes to share their story about what it is that they're doing. 7 minutes, it will be timed. So you'll see Sarah giving people an indication of the time as we're up here. But we want this to be quite collaborative. This isn't meant to be one-sided. It's not just me or the speaker standing up here speaking to you. We want you to listen. We want you to be prepared to engage. We want to ask burning questions, but not at the end of each speaker. We're going to wait for each of our 4 speakers to finish speaking. And then at the end of the fullness of the storytelling, we will then have all 4 speakers back on here with me, and we will go back and forth with a Q&A. How does that sound? Yes? Fantastic. So with that background, with that context, with no pressure whatsoever, I'm going to introduce our very first speaker of the day, Marie Telly from Mali, fellowship year 2015. Here you go.
Do you have, sorry?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to start with a little story. When I was a child, my dad used to ask me a single question. Do you want to go to school? That question sounds a bit weird, right? But I say yes. And sometimes I wonder if I had said no at that time, I wouldn't be here today. That question still works in my mind. And I said that he said it for some reason. And the bottom line here is that he gave me the opportunity, he gave me the choice to go to school or not to go to school. I have some questions for you here. Do you ever think once again about how many people in this world are living without a proper room, without having daily food, without getting access to school, without even getting access to a proper health care? Do you have that number in your mind? And have you thought about if you don't eat for a few days, what will happen to those people? My name is Marie Telly. I work with Catholic Relief Services, mainly in the emergency department. I am with Sarah since 2016, for about now 7 years. I work in Kisili department. Kisili means saving life. It is emergency department which assists the displaced people in the north and central area of Mali. The project has been first designed in 2016 with the phase 1. We started with a single budget of $1 million. Today, we are at the phase 5, and guess what? We have a funding of $12 million. We are doing a good progress. Thank you. So we are doing a good progress, not in the sense that we are encouraging the war happen in the north parts of Mali so that we can have more displaced people, in the sense that our partners are doing a great job to support us in this job. So what is the project about? In which domain we are working on? We work on 5 sectors: food assistance, NFI, non-food item. We work on giving them some cash to allow the family to live, the displaced people. We also provide them with wash kits. We also provide them with shelters. If I say shelters, it's not like the big building that you see. It's not a shelter like apartment you live in, but just imagine shelters in sub-Saharan area. It's just tarpaulin. Tarpaulin is just a plastic substance or plastic item that they use to build like 2 hours, and they can use that for about 1 year. So that's the kind of shelter. I don't have time to project this, but if you see the shelters, you will see how those people are suffering. They have left everything behind them where they've built their cultures, things for years. But because of war, they've left everything to move in a safe place just to save their life. When they move, they don't have nothing with them, just the backpack, the children, and then they run. The projects work with some local partners. When we talk about emergency projects, when we talk about sustainable projects in West Africa, we cannot work without acceptance in the localities. We need to be accepted by the people we serve. That's why we work with local partners, we work with World Food Program, we work with ACTED, we work with OCHA, and we work with the government, the local government in the place, so that they help us be accepted in the community to facilitate the response we are doing. And we also thank our partners, USAID, through the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, who has been working with us since 2016 till now to continue funding this project. And the aim of this first fifth of the project is to reach 53 people, 53 response. We want to conduct 52 response before the end of the project. And the project is aimed to be 2 years. We are almost in 18 months, and we are left with just few months so that the project can close. And we hope that we will still get phase 6 to continue assisting and following up with displaced people in this part of Mali. My call for all leaders who are here, my call for all donors, wherever they are, even if they are not here, we can pass around the message. My call for them is good to assist people in emergency situations. But what we are doing to those people, what we are giving them is the minimum. We give them food. For how long? For 1 month, for 2 months, and after that, we need more sustainable projects to continue assisting these people. We give them the opportunity of giving them some cash, some food. But in 1 year, what are those people going to be? Because they are not in the culture, they are not in the site. They left another place. They left what they built for years to come to a new place. So we need to follow up those people, assist them so that they can be independent by training them with activities that they can do. And the children they have, They left school to come to this place, so they are not going back to school. Are they going to stay this way? So we need more sustainable projects to help those children to get another chance to go back to school. If we don't do that, in a place like Mali, if we don't do that, if we don't accompany those children, what are they going to be in 20 years, in 15 years? It is those children who will integrate the terrorist group and fight against the country. Sometimes we ask ourselves, where are the terrorists coming from? They don't fall from the sky. They are people in the country. Those are our children that has grew up in violences. That this is the only thing they know. They grew up with that. And if they grew up and they don't have job, they will, of course, integrate the group of terrorists and do such kind of thing. Because you just propose them money that they have never seen before. So let's accompany those people by funding and designing more and more new projects. So I hope USAID people are here and they will continue supporting the NGOs back home in West Africa. And I will end up this speech by Obama's quote. I remember in 2015 in our presidential summit, Obama said something which touched my heart a lot. He said this way, we don't get stronger by putting people out, by leaving them off, but we get stronger by lifting them up. And I will add this one from my culture, which says, instead of giving fish every day to someone, teach that person how to do fishing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you so much for giving us insights into the work that you do. And thank you for sharing your story with us. We'll invite you to your seat and we'll invite you back up to the stage once we're done. I always find it interesting, the background and the stories and the projects that different sorts of fellows are doing. So back in, this was 2015, 2014, I was still doing work. I was doing work in Nigeria at the Federal Ministry of Health. And that was the first time I ever heard about the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And it was from so many of my, I want to call them very impressive friends. Of course, I would say that they're my friends, but so many of my very impressive friends were talking about this fellowship, talking about the sorts of people who were applying, encouraging others to apply. And from then on, it has only snowballed. And the more and more I learn about the fellowship, the more I am excited to interact with all of you and the many more throughout the world. So hearing stories like Marie's about the impacts that one person can have with any type of project is near and dear to my heart. So we'll move on to the next speaker. So I invite up to the stage now, Muhumuza Frank Banks from Uganda, fellowship class of 2018. Please, a round of applause.
Thank you for such a good opportunity. You want me here? Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. Wow. Powerful. My name is Mumuza Frank Banks. I'm so grateful to be on this platform. First and foremost, I want to thank IREX It wasn't IREX, it was Mandela Washington Fellowship. I want to first thank Mandela Washington Fellowship for giving me that opportunity in 2018. Honestly speaking, it's the best opportunity I've ever received in my entire life. I'm 35 years, but it's the best. My background, I'm an engineer by profession, but turned to be, actually I'm born to be a businessman. I wasn't born to be an engineer. It was just, you know, I grew up in Africa. Parents, when you do business, they say, leave that. Do you want to be like the other guy who is struggling in the other small shop? You can do engineering. I'm just giving a background of how Africans are. So I did electrical engineering. I struggled with trigonometry, what metrics, equations, what was sleepless night, what it was hectic. Fortunately, I did it, but I thank God that right now I'm doing something that I really, really love. If you give me $100, I'll turn it into $1,000. That's the best mathematics I did, I think. Thank you. So, Fort Gallic Farm. I founded Fort Gallic Farm in 2010. 2012, first, when I founded Fort Gallic Farm, it is a huge story. I had traveled to Spain, and I found that in Spain, people are growing garlic. And a farmer, can you imagine a farmer? The poorest person in Africa is a farmer. It is the naked truth. Am I lying? Who are Africans here? You're all African Americans? I want real Africans. You know what I mean? In Uganda, okay, in Uganda, if you want to be poor, that's what they say. But I'm an outstanding. I'm not poor because I'm doing agriculture. So I found that this Spanish farmer was making $1 million. That's what he told me, growing garlic. By then, I was working with Uganda Telecom as a site engineer. And I was earning, a whole year I was earning, I get $3,000. So I started comparing figures. The next year I resigned. I decided to go and join farming because I saw that farmers have time to relax, to be with the family, and I was working 24/7. So I joined farming, and to my surprise, I found that in Uganda we import 100% garlic from China. A market, by then it was, in 2010, it was $10 million. Right now it's more than that because this data is 2019. It's actually 32 million US dollars worth of sales. And this goes to Chinese pocket. And man, we are crying that we are poor. We are not. We are supporting Chinese to be strong. So right now I have 1% of the Chinese. And our farmers, I have over 826 serious farmers. But if I'm to count, I have over 2,000 farmers. But serious farmers who give me about, I usually have every season, we have 2 seasons, I usually have about between 3,000 to 6,000 tons every season. So we usually have like 10,000 to 12,000 tons of garlic, fresh garlic. And we import our garlic to Congo, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And now we're in another phase of doing garlic what? Garlic powder. So Fort Gallic Farm, who we are, Fort Gallic Farm, we are organic, locally. Oh, sorry. Okay. Where we are in Uganda. We are creating opportunities for farmers. I won't say farmer, everyone is a farmer in Africa. I will say households. We give them garlic seeds. Nowadays we do garlic seeds on credit, and then they grow, and then they sell back to us. So they earn, at least every family can earn about 3,000 US dollars every season, a minimum of 3,000 US dollars, and a maximum of 1,000 US dollars, depending on their plots and land. So we're empowering farmers, we're empowering households to earn a living in what we're doing. And then another thing we are doing, we are cutting down the 99% inorganic garlic grown in sewage and chemicals and all that stuff, because we're organic. And the third thing we are doing, we are strengthening our local economy. We ourselves, we are strengthening the local economy to see that our economy can do well. And right now in Africa, in East Africa, I think Uganda is the best growing economy. Garlic, yeah, just like I've told you, that's what we do. We have two bases. We are in Fort Portal, that's in the western part of the country, and then we are also in Kampala. That's where we have our warehouse and the things that we use. Okay, garlic seeds, just like I've told you, and our profit margin is a little bit lower nowadays. It's at 40%, as in we maximize the profit to our local farmers. We buy at a higher price from them, and we sell at a minimal price where we can make some profit. We don't want to rip off our farmers. Then, like I've told you that this is a data for 2019, our current overall revenue is about 250,000 US dollars annual sales. So this is how we do the business, the calculation, the math. Price of garlic seeds sold to farmers is at $6. Why are we selling at $6 and we buy from them at $2? It's because garlic, we plant the cloves. So by the time you make, we engineer the clove to a point when it is going to be planted, it loses some moisture content, and then when you've kept like 100 kilograms of garlic seeds, by the time you give it to the farmer, it's about 80 or 70. So we try to catch up with the loss. So that is our market. And then here we are locally, no chemicals, no what. And who we want partners. And that's the biggest reason that I'm here. We are looking for partners. We are looking for people who want to grow with us. We are looking for people who want to change, to make a change. In the whole of Africa, we import garlic, the whole of Africa. 99% of the garlic that we consume in Africa is from China. We only have Egypt, which grows garlic, and still the garlic it grows, it's about 4% of the world output. It's a little bit less. And South Africa also grows a little bit of garlic. But the rest of the African continent, they import garlic from China. So we want to take up this market. And we can. We have the best climate in Uganda, best soils. We have the people who can grow the garlic as well. So we had the first Kampala Garlic Festival. That was in 2019. It has never been anywhere apart from the US and Europe, but not in Africa. So we were the first Kampala Garlic Festival. And I thank God for that. It was so colorful. You see the youth? We mobilized a lot of youth. And some of them, they grow garlic to pay for their tuition. We have so many of them who grow garlic just to clear their tuition. Some of them have built houses. And this is testimony from farmers. Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of my story. In 2020, because of the initiative that I did, I approached so many government officials who could help us to amplify this kind of business throughout the whole country. And then Uganda started exporting garlic outside the country officially. Unfortunately, it was not in their line of what? Of interest. The line of interest is what? Politics. So I joined politics in 2020. I went in for Member of Parliament, and that seat was hot for me as well. We were 5, and there was a lot of rigging. Probably I went through, but there was a lot of rigging. So I was number 3. But I thank God for Mandela Washington Fellowship, for the exposure, for everything you did. You've sponsored an American expert in garlic, IREX, who came to our farm, trained our farmers, and promised market to us. He was telling me that 1 kilo of garlic in the US, it's about $80 to $70. And you know how much we're selling it down there? $15 to $20. I'm like, okay, wow, this is business. And so the reason I'm here, I want to open up a branch here, get some investors, and then we do business. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much for sharing your origin stories with us. I love to hear where people decided to either stay where they are or do something different, or what it was that influenced you, what it was that caused you to decide to go into a particular industry or a particular line of work. Money is a great motivator. Social enterprise and impact is also a great motivator. Healing people is a great motivator. I love to hear all of the background stories, and I'm sure that the audience has also been very, very interested in hearing what people have done. So, moving on to our next speaker, I invite to our stage Philmon Shikomba from Namibia, year 2017.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, um, leaders from all walk of life who understand what it means to better yourselves and the communities that you live in. It's a particular privilege to share this opportunity with fellow Mandela Washington Fellows, who I call world changers. My name is Philemon Shikomba. I am from Namibia. I'm a lawyer by profession. Growing up in Namibia, I was very fortunate to have my mom as a role model. She started a school under a tree when she came from college, and it grew from pre-grade to grade 9. She retired this year. I am very happy to share that I collected resources to electrify the school with solar energy. And I collected 3,000 books through a book drive here in New York to the school's library, and also constructed a school block at the school with 2 additional classrooms in the school. Currently, I work for the Human Rights Watch as an advisor for the African region here in New York. My work is centered around fighting for human rights and advancing the human rights cause on the African continent. We have a human rights crisis on the African continent, and we can all attest to that. We see it at every junction of the African continent. Women, children, minority groups. It's a battlefield. We have a lot of work to do as young Africans to transform the future of our continent. Throughout the course of my work, starting from the UN to the African Court on People and Human Rights in Tanzania to the Human Rights Watch, I've always held myself in the position of what I can do for my continent. I am in the US right now, but I've always looked for opportunities on how I can align my career with doing something for the African continent. So when I was working for the UN, I was assisting the Namibian advisor on Africa. And where I work currently, I am advancing the African agenda. It has always been my objective to do something for the African continent. And it all started with the Mandela Washington Fellowship. It planted a seed of what can I do for my continent? You know, meeting young people from different countries and what they do for their countries has inspired me to use my journey, you know, as a permanent contribution to the African continent. So I am in the US. I am finding my ground in the US, but I am not here for myself. I am here to serve the African continent. I've always tailored my career in a way that contributes to the African continent. And I'll always encourage, you know, fellow young people that, you know, it does not matter where you are or where you find yourself. You know, if you dedicate yourself to the cause, you can still contribute to your country, wherever you are, and you can still tailor your career in a manner that contributes to your continent. Part of this, I would like to share that, it's amplifying the voices of young people on the African continent. Young Africans are under pressure. Being a young African today is a battlefield, and we are not in positions of leadership because we don't want to be in positions, but we do not have access to resources, we do not have access to opportunities. And fortunately for spaces like the Mandela Washington Fellowship, we are able to enhance our skills, but they are very few. But I really want to highlight that it's not by choice that young Africans are not in positions of power. They do not have resources, they don't have quality education. Few of them who went to college cannot access jobs, and they tend to drugs and broken stories. So we do have a lot of work to do as Mandela Washington Fellows in our continent to really inspire fellow young people to take up spaces. And like my brother from Uganda spoke, he ran for office in parliament. I want to see more of us do that. The African continent is at the crossroads, and nothing seems to get better. We have, situations like what's going on in Uganda now, the rights of the minorities, and I speak as a human rights professional. We cannot continue to tolerate the kind of leadership that exists in countries like Uganda. It is up to us, we young African leaders who were equipped with the resources like the Mandela Washington Fellowship, to raise our voices and bring change on our continent. We cannot sit quietly and watch the rights of the LGBTQ community and other minority groups suffer in Uganda, where people are being persecuted for simply being human, where people are being sentenced to death. We cannot keep quiet. And I want to see more Mandela Washington Fellows speak up. We need to come up with our voices on social media and speak up. And I'm sending that message across as an empowered young person by the Mandela Washington Fellowship in a position to advance the human rights agenda. The violation of women and children's rights is a major concern on the African continent. We have a leadership crisis on the western region of the African continent. Coups. You can talk about Gabon, Mali, Sudan, Burkina Faso, Guinea, with almost every new country emerging at every junction. We have a leadership crisis on the African continent, and we have to acknowledge that. And institutions like the AU and the UN, currently now in sitting, need to lead. And it's no longer about conversations. It should be about solutions. Bringing change to the African continent will take more than just empty talks, It will take real leadership to move Africa forward. We should develop a culture of speaking out. We should develop a culture of calling out injustice. We are the young people that will unlock Africa's potential with our work, either in farming, either in the leader from Mali who is doing everything possible in a country that is facing the challenge of a leadership crisis. We are capable. She's raising funds, 12 million. She can change a country. Women can change a country. And I would like to share that as young people, we thrive not when we have done it all, in our journey, as fellows, but when we still have more to do. And as Mandela Washington Fellows, we are charged with the responsibility to make a difference in our societies. And it is truly up to us to create the Africa that we want and the Africa that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philemon. That was a wonderful call to action. And I think it resonates with so many of us in this room this evening. As a person who was born and raised on the continent, I was born and raised in Nigeria, did all of my schooling here, went back and lived in West Africa and South Africa for the past 12 years. Only recently came back when my oldest daughter, she had a health condition that could only be treated, of course, in the best hospitals. So we moved back. But it also brings the question, or begs the question, of what is actually our responsibility as Africans, as young Africans, to help the continent. And this is something that people ask me frequently when I first moved back to Nigeria. Because technically, the country doesn't owe you anything. People would come up to me and say, well, Nigeria didn't school you, you didn't go to school here. Nigeria didn't really quite fully raise you. There's nothing that you owe the country. And if you're now American, walk American, talk American, you can do the American thing. Why should you bother to go back and do anything for the continent? And I think it's a question that comes up frequently for many different types of people. And even after moving back here to the US once again for my child, what type of activism, like you mentioned, is appropriate, should we take on? Should we be doing like NSARS, marching in the streets, taking bullets for our country? Because I was right there, less than a mile away from Lekki Toll Gate in Lagos the night it happened. Should we be writing legal letters? Should we be on social media tweeting and making noise? Should we be running for office? What is the appropriate mechanism for which young people, especially young people who have options, international options, what is the appropriate mechanism for us to get involved? And do we have an obligation to, oh, I'm calling myself young by saying we, and do we have an obligation to get involved? It's not an easy question to answer. And it's a very personal question in many ways, and I'm sure it's something that you've gone through in many of your groups of friends or your colleagues. For me, it was never a question of, should I go back? And my own aha moments was, I was in the US, I did my undergrad at Stanford, did my master's at Cornell. I had started my PhD at the Harvard Business School. And then my grandfather got sick. And I went back to the village. I'm from a village called Obosi in eastern Nigeria. I went back to the village. And the healthcare facility there was, when I say terrible, that would be even kind. The so-called running water was water you couldn't even, it wasn't clear, it was dirty. Long story short, my grandfather passed away. And I came back here and I had a really nice lucrative offer because my job or my work at the time was focused on mergers and acquisitions for pharmaceuticals, the time when Big Pharma was merging with a lot of the biotechs. So I was here to make more money for Big Pharma, essentially. And I asked myself the question, Chinayanwa, that's my phone name. I said, Chinayanwa, what are you doing? One of you in America is going to make maybe a few tens of millions of extra dollars for Big Pharma. But one of you, with your training, with your background in Nigeria, you could potentially save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. So why not take your training and go back? And that's a decision that I had to make with my husband, with my family at the time. And it's not a decision that you look down on other people that they don't choose to make, because everything is different, everything is personal. But it is certainly something to consider. And I really commend you, Philemon, for bringing up the conversation of what is our responsibility? Does somebody who fully moves into the continent or takes up something on the continent, should they be looking down on someone who is so-called just tweeting? Or is everybody obligated to at least do a little bit? Or if you're like my older sister, she said, no, me, please, I beg. I'm not even trying to think of the continents because forget them. For everyone is different. We were both raised the same. So I just want to highlight to you that organizations, programs like the Mandela Washington Fellows, and the work that is being supported, and the impact that it has, and the conversations that it spurs are significant and so important for so many reasons. And I just want to thank you all for having these sorts of conversations here at the Africa Center, because it's very much what we are all about. So let me not take up too much of your time. I want to invite our final speaker, Fumi. I hope Fumi, oh yes, fantastic, okay. Fumi, can I say your full name? Olorunfunmi Yemi Adebajo from Nigeria, Fellowship Class of 2016. Please come on up.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a very big honor to be here. I'd like to tell you a story about myself and the work that I do. Armed with a master's degree in education administration and planning, I decided that education was the solution to the world's problem. And I took myself to the world's largest floating slum, Makoko, located in Lagos, Nigeria, and decided to change the world, one woman at a time. In 2016, I got selected for the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and with grants from the US Consulate and support from the fellowship, I built 3 schools. I started working with women, improving access to education to solve the problem of poverty in Lagos, and from there to the world. And then, my 13-year-old student was raped. I decided to fight for her, and the community came for me. Number 1, you are not one of us. You don't speak our language. If the family supports it, what is your problem? I decided to fight, and I think I lied. I lied because my life was in danger, because it wasn't my business. I wanted to just provide education as a solution to poverty. And here I am faced with rape. And one of the community chiefs called me to say, do you know if she was raped because she has started wearing shoes? Shoes and rape. I couldn't figure. And then another community chief told me that the father of the rapist was also a known rapist. That means it was normal. Number 3, they told me that if the mother of the girl wanted justice and the father didn't want justice, don't push it, because the father is probably in support. And here I am, a stranger. I do not speak their language. I do not know how to swim, but I went on a canoe with some of my friends, and I told them that there's a satellite up there. The United States Embassy is watching us, and nothing must happen to me. All of this was done through a translator. And we decided that the justice was to hand over the boy to the police and all of that. And the police told us, we don't go there. And the community chief told me, I am related to her, to the victim, on the mother's side. And though I'm the chief, I cannot give justice because I'm related to her on the mother's side. Anyway, we decided that they were going to, justice was public flogging of the boy, and that was the end of it. I couldn't handle the emotions of the girl. We took her to everywhere I could, but every day she comes to class. 1 minute she's crying, the next minute she's laughing. And I just wanted to improve access to education. Shortly after that, we trained some of the women in fashion designing, and they decided that they wanted an elaborate graduation so that people could recognize them as having gone to school. On the morning of the graduation, one of my girls was missing. She was the one championing the need for the graduation. So I knew something was amiss, but I couldn't place it. And halfway through the ceremony, her family came and said they thought she was with us at the event. And I was shocked that nobody was looking for her. She was 20 at the time, very beautiful, full of life. And for 2 weeks, we didn't know where she was until she called us to say she was abducted, forced marriage in Lagos, Nigeria. We did all we could, but I'm here to tell you that those stories still continue. And I am just one of the over 500 Mandela Washington Fellows in Nigeria doing outstanding work with such stories that I just shared. And our association is committed to cascading the investment of the US government in us to our local communities. There has been a lot of conversations recently about US-Africa engagement. The SDG goals are just 7 years away. Would we achieve it? Beyond words, beyond documents, beyond meetings like this in high-profile places, how do we want to effect change in our local communities? Effective change starts first with collaboration. Collaboration with individuals like Olorunfunmi, like the other 500 and something Mandela Washington Fellows, like the over 3,000 Mandela Washington Fellows across sub-Saharan Africa. Partner with us. The stories may look small, from the farmer farming garlic and the person that ran for office and lost. But each person that you work with is effecting change at grassroots level, and this translates to achieving global change. And I'm also here to tell you that beyond collaboration, there is a need for commitment to the work. The work that we do is tiring, is a work of passion. It's not just about making money, it's about changing lives. And there is a need to encourage one another so that we can stay focused on the work. And the last thing I want to talk about is communication. How do we tell the story of Africa? How do we sell ourselves to the world? Yes, we have problems. Are you telling the story of the person farming garlic? Are you telling the story of the one girl out of 200 that went to school and made sure she finished? Are you telling the story of the woman that sold her last wrapper to ensure that her child acquires education? Are you telling those stories? I would want to leave you with these words, that change is a small word, it's a big word, but change is you and I. Change is everyday decisions to do something different and impact the lives of someone beside you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fumi. That was wonderful. That was really wonderful. And a big applause as I invite all of our speakers. Sorry, Fumi, I have to invite you back to the stage. As I invite all of our speakers back to the stage for Q&A. I know I have a number of questions. So please, everybody who just spoke, please back up and onto the stage. So I know that we have a number of questions, and I myself have a few questions that I'd like to kick off the conversation with. So please join me on stage. You will find a microphone one by one in your seats. Oh, okay, great. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I really, really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure that the audience has enjoyed listening to the work that you do. You talk about the work that you do. So I'm going to kick off our Q&A, and then I'll open it up to the audience. I can already see questions already, but please let me just ask one, and then we'll have a couple from the audience. So for anybody who was here this morning, this morning the panelists spoke about the need for an emergence of bold new leadership when tackling the climate crisis specifically. As young leaders, and we touched on this aspect of leadership on the continent a bit, as young leaders, how do you respond to that? What are your thoughts on the need for bold, new types of leadership, and whether that's leadership based on a new age group coming in, because on the continent our leaders tend to be quite old, new types of thinking, technocrats versus pure politicians. Please open it up. I would love to hear your thoughts on having an emergence of new, bold leaders.
I work at grassroots level, so that's where my specialty lies, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So I was also introduced to the world of climate change, and I went to meet the community chief, and he said there's not much fish in the sea anymore, and the fishermen are poor because the Americans tampered with the moon. Now, my own solution to addressing those issues of climate change, but at grassroots level, was to use indigenous solutions to address it. Like I went down to their level of knowledge. Like if someone is saying the Americans tampered with the moon, that's why everybody is poor, So I think that it's important to not come from an angle of, I know it all. We know that you know a lot. We know you know all the SDG goals and everything, but come to the level of the people that need the information, and that's how you can effect change.
Other thoughts on leadership and change?
We have a leadership crisis on the continent, as I highlighted earlier. And then most of the African countries are being developed with unsustainable means. So I definitely think that the conversation or the question on climate change is very important. And then it requires new thinking and new leadership and a new leadership approach, because we've seen, especially the existing kind of leadership on the African continent, which mostly consists of aging leadership, which does not seem to acknowledge the seriousness of climate change. But we see the impact of climate change with increasing floods and a lot of other natural disasters on the African continent and drought, which are all a result of climate change. So I think, we need to be very intentional with the conversation on climate change.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both for your input. I'm going to open it to the audience so that you have an opportunity. And I see you in the Ankara.
Hello, good evening. My name is Uchenna from Nigeria, 2017. So I'm grateful to Mandela Washington Fellowship. It changed my life and still changing my life. So, it's good to hear from you all and the work you're doing. So my question will go to you. I love the way you spoke, but I just want to know what you do on a yearly basis to stay in touch with the African roots, the leaders there. I just want to connect with what you do. One thing you do on a yearly basis to stay in touch with leadership and people back home.
Thank you so much for your question. I have been away from my country probably for 10 years now, but I've also been the most present person in my country in the past 10 years. I am in touch with the grassroots of my country. I will tell you that before going for the Mandela Fellowship, I was studying in Russia. but I was also raising funds to electrify a Roscoe in Namibia. And then after that, I came to do my master's in the US after the fellowship, with the assistance of my country's president towards my education. I try my best to be in touch with the presidency, especially. I'm very fortunate to share a very good relationship with my country's president, and I try to contribute where possible. I'm particularly interested in the subject of, the exclusion of the boy child. And I saw that the president, when I engaged him prior on that subject, and then he went to Paris last weekend to Sciences Po University, and he spoke very passionately on that subject. So I am involved, with my country's leadership, and I write to our daily newspapers. I have a column in the Namibian newspaper where I share views on minority rights, especially on the issue on Uganda, where I share my views on climate change and other subjects. So I try my best to be involved. I take up interviews with local media. I use my social media platforms to engage with young people from home and also spearhead any trending topics on current affairs on the country. So I try my level best to be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have the gentleman over here.
Right. Thank you. My name is Gak Malek. I'm from South Sudan, and I'm MWF 2023 this year. My question is going to go to my neighbor, Uganda, colleague. And in your opening remarks, you were like, give me $100 and I will turn it into $1,000. So what I do back home, I do train young people on entrepreneurship and guide them on business coaching and mentorship to see how best they can prosper economically and be economically independent. And your statement is really, it has captured my attention because a lot of young people that I deal with, they have been asking me, how can they make money? And now I have someone whom I can refer them to so that I can be collecting that $100 to them and give it to you. So how long does it take for you to turn that $100 to 1,000? And what advice can you have, say that I can still refer the same advice to the young people that go through my training, say that at least they can have other investment opportunities. Besides having the skills, what else can they do practically to make more money? Can they invest in your company? Because I've been meeting some people who ask for money. They go invest in it and then give back the profit. I need practical thing because I might even see you after a year and give you $100. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much, my brother. Oh, Aga Malika. Okay. Yeah, South Sudan. I've been to South Sudan, to Juba. As businessmen, we multiply. Yeah, I'm into multiplication. So one thing I can say is I've done that. Like I've said, we have over 2,000 farmers in Uganda right now. By the time I joined by the time I joined Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2018, it was just a family, a few couple of friends. I had kept it to myself to just be alone. You know what it means? So after Mandela Washington Fellowship, I introduced it to a whole village, and people have multiplied money. So that's how we multiply money. We borrow money, and then we multiply it that way. What I mean by borrowing money, we plant seeds. You plant 1 clove of garlic, it gives you a bulb with over 20 cloves. So that's how we multiply money. After 4 months, we harvest garlic. We have a huge market of garlic. 2021, I was in South Africa on our Intro Africa trade show. I got contracts. I have all contracts to supply. I got a contract worth $1 million supply to South Africa. Every 2 months, man, I looked at the contract, I couldn't take it. I have it, well signed. And that's when I went to the government to tell them, guys, here is the deal. In this deal, we are going to employ over 50,000 people. I mean, indigenous. subsistence farmers who can incorporate garlic into their farms, and they make money. And you see, in Kenya and Uganda, we have the problem of crop riding. Wild animals in gazetted area bumping into people's farms and destroy everything, like elephants destroy everything. And you find families going hungry because they don't have anything completely. And even little kids, children who don't go to school because they have to stay in the gardens, guarding. So we use garlic as a buffer crop to mitigate human-world conflicts. We've seen this, it has worked. I did it. I was sponsored by USDF, and we did this project in Uganda, and it worked. So we shall talk, bro. It works. We bury money and we multiply it in 4 months. We have 2 seasons, that's 8 months. I hope I answered you.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. So we're going to take a couple of more questions. I see you in the black and white and you in the tan. Just one more question. And then Marcia is going to introduce Chido. I have the opportunity to go and make sure that the food is coming. So thank you all so much for having me. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for your time. I'm going to make sure that the food is coming out, and I hope that you guys are able to stay after and do a heck of a lot of networking. So we're going to have the question. Marcia is going to introduce Chido, and then we'll open it up for more networking. Thank you all so much for your time. Please, your question.
Thank you so much. I'm Zone Zero, 2014. So we came in as Yali, and then we went out as Mandela Washington Fellows. Yeah, so thanks to Mandela Washington Fellowship, because I remember the first day we got here in the US, I was placed at University of Delaware. And the first package we received, there was a book in it, which I'll never forget. It's like my Bible, The Art of Servant Leadership. And reading that changed my whole, thinking, which also encouraged me to pursue. And that was part of my PhD dissertation, where I was looking at women's leadership in the role of armed conflict. So my question is to Fumi. I work with a civil society, and when I was listening to you, especially, the whole ordering, like you're not part of the community. I also face that similar problem, and most of the times it can be very depressing, where you invest so much and then you are reminded that you are the order. So how do you do it? How do you keep it going? And my next question is to Mary. I'm also part of a conflict area, and I just wanted to understand, most of the refugees, do you also have incidents of refugees that are as a result of climate induced disaster? Because experiencing conflict is one thing, then at the same time you're experiencing either flood, disaster. So how is this all dynamics? How do you all manage this? Thank you.
So the question was, how do I cope with it? My kind of work is a very emotional work. Someone told me to dissociate my work from my emotions, but it's really hard to do because, you are working with these women and girls every day, and they're sort of like your family. But one of the things that I've done, I've stayed there I've been in the community, in that particular community for like 7 years now. And one of the things that I did was to be friends with everybody. I don't, now when I say friends, at least I have a relationship with them. We were building one of our schools, and some of the touts came, they wanted to take off the roof, they wanted to do all sorts. And it was someone else that said, oh, you are the ringleader. Your child that has not gone to school in 5 years, this is the person paying the school fees. So I have the good people on my side and I have the bad people on my side. I just have to manage the situation very well. The touts, for instance, I check on them. You have a child, I give you clothes, I go to your house. Not necessarily, I don't know how to, it's not an intimate relationship, but they all know me. So I think in professional terms, you say stakeholder engagement. Do you understand? I am friends with the chief. I am friends with the area boys. I am friends with the women. I'm friends with the children. Our program was targeted at women, but we also realized that their children had issues. The few children that were able to go to school never ever had anybody to look up to. So we had to start doing a community mentoring program, and we named it Adugbo Mentoring Program. Adugbo is a Yoruba word for community. So when they came, the touts came to pull down everything. The first thing that caught their attention was Adugbo, like, Adugbo, what's Adugbo? And they said, they themselves interpreted it to mean neighborhood, street. So they were telling themselves that this thing is for us, so don't let us spoil it. So I think that being able to engage your stakeholders well would help you. And then one other thing that I have done for myself is to have people that I talk with. On the day that the girl that was forcefully, like the one that was the victim of forced marriage, called, and she asked the guy, why did you do this to me? And the guy said, it's because you have acquired a skill. Tailoring, just learn how to make clothes. I felt guilty. I felt really guilty that it was because of me she went through that. So the first thing I did was take my phone, call the first fellow, hello, this is happening. I have people that I share my stories with so that it doesn't become too burdensome for me. And then they also encourage me, oh, you cannot stop this work. You are doing a lot.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a minute, if you don't mind? I'm sorry, everyone. I've got to interrupt the conversation. We'd like to actually call our closing speaker because she has a very, very busy schedule. And the fact that she fit us in, we're really, really honored. She's also a 2017 Mandela Washington Fellowship alumna. So we're really pleased that the Africa Union's youth advisor is able to join us. Chido, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcia, for that. And I'm sorry, I literally have to dash for another speaking engagement, which is my third or fourth for the day. But I really, really just wanted to be here. And I'm so happy to see a lot of familiar faces and, just inspired by what my fellow alumni community had to share and had to say. I was taking so many notes because there was just so much I had to share. But I'm also looking at my team literally saying, okay, we need to speed up. But I really, really just want to focus on a few things. And I think I'll start off by, I think one of the alumni asked a question to say, but what should we do? How can we be involved in shaping the development of Africa? And I just wanted to say that we need to be strategic. My fellow sister spoke about how she had to manage her stakeholders and see how to balance the good and the bad. And I think it's the same thing. We really need to be strategic. We've heard so many times that youth are the largest demographic in Africa, and it keeps coming up. And at the same time, we complain a lot. I'm a young person myself, so I've also been a person who complains until I got to the other side. Just to give you a brief history or perhaps of my role, where I was appointed as the African Union Chairperson, Special Envoy in Youth, where I'm sitting as the youngest diplomat in the cabinet of the chairperson. And really my responsibility is to work with our 55 governments in Africa and to work within the African Union to advocate and lobby for young people to be in the forefront and to be included as part of the decision-making processes. So I'm here under the delegation of the African Union and, engaging on the sidelines, but also at the UN General Assembly, again, just to make sure that the youth African voice is not left behind, even in the AU statutory meetings where I have the honor and privilege to represent all of you and be in the meetings where decisions are made on education too. Just last year, at the UN General Assembly, where there was a Transforming Education Summit, specifically for Africa. We had a meeting on education. I wish I'd known them, but definitely we should discuss and speak because we had a meeting dedicated to education where our member states and our head of states were reporting on the status of education in their countries. And then I also got the opportunity to present a report on what young people are saying, the status in education based on young people's perspectives, which was a Transforming Education Africa Youth Declaration from various youth leaders that helped me to create and formulate it. Now, having said that, we also advocated in 2024 for the African African Union, the theme of the year is on transforming education in Africa. This year it's on AFCFTA, which is on, trade, where we were negotiating the trade protocols country to country, but we've also negotiated the protocol specifically on women and youth, which makes sure that whenever you're trading, then there should be some regulations that protect young people from country to country. 47 countries have signed onto the AFCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and we're still lobbying for the rest of the countries to sign onto this, just to name a few of some of the various initiatives that are happening. Now, having said that, there's just so much I really would have loved to share on the work that I've been embarking on, but most importantly, what it means for the development of Africa. But for the sake of time, I think I'll just go and share some testimonies in terms of my role. Being one young African, Black, and a woman, and you're working within a space and a cabinet with, the older generation, you're working with the head of states, you literally have to almost work times 10 as hard. And because you need to prove yourself. They normally, coming in as young people, we advocating for change, and we're doing it, in a way that we're just frustrated. And already because of that, it comes as a barrier. And when you have that barrier, you need, the support of your peers. When I started my office, literally, I was just one, because I'm a political appointee. In as much as I'm under the cabinet of the chairperson, I create my own secretariat to support me. And I'm happy to see Amanda in this room, because if I could testify that at the moment, I have four full-time staff that are working in my office from 8 to 5. And that was facilitated by Amanda, who seconded Africa Leadership Academy fellows to come and work in the office. And this came as a conversation, and I was saying, I need capacity, I need support, because if I'm going to represent 55 countries and 870 million young people, I can't do it alone, in as much as I'm in the cabinet, but I also now need to lobby to say, no, but I also need a mini secretariat and cabinet of my own. So just that appreciation, I was so excited to see that she's here, and I thought I could use that as a testimony of, the way I've been managed to work with Mandela Washington Fellows and Yali alumni. And even just last year, when I was starting off the office, I had to start off with volunteers within the space. And majority of my volunteers, again, is people that I had to look within my network, that were Mandela Washington Fellow alumni, that helped me to set up the office, come up with the strategy, go about my initiatives. And even when I did a listening tour, because I thought it's important, I really loved what you said about community. When I embarked in this role, I thought that if I'm going to represent the voices of young people at the global stage, at the head of states meetings, at the African Union, it has to be centered and grounded upon what young people are saying themselves. And in addition to that, what I've seen on the ground. So I launched a listening tour. I embarked on a listening tour, and this listening tour is a three-way model, which looks at youth engagement, community engagement, and policy and political engagement. On the youth engagement front, I host youth town hall meetings. Again, a lot of Mandela Washington Fellow alumni have managed to also come together and be part of these discussions in the youth town halls. We were discussing issues that are affecting Africa, as well as solution-based conversations, where they also get to advise on some of the requests I'm making on the decision-making table at the African Union. The second part was community engagement. Again, because I thought it's very important that, we do not leave, the marginalized communities, the underprivileged, and sometimes they do not have a voice. So as part of, my engagements, I go to communities, I sit down with young people, I get to share about Agenda 2063. Again, the Agenda 2063 is similar to the Sustainable Development Goals, a story for another day, but the Agenda 2063 actually came first, and now we have SDG goals, but pretty much, just to highlight how they're also represented, get to see the work they're doing in communities, and also look at how I can amplify their voice in that work. So for instance, last year when I was in Nigeria, in Abuja, I visited Okudu district, and in Okudu district, it was peer-to-peer education of young people, some that had to drop out because of COVID-19. And that was also as a basis of my declaration and what I had to report to our Africa presidents last year, the Transforming Education Summit. And what I'm now looking into when they're coming up with their common position on Africa and some of the policies, as well as even just their budgeting, really, where we advocate for member states to say, okay, what's the certain budget are you taking towards youth participation, and what are you taking towards education? And I think it's also important to bring that balance with policy and political advocacy. So as a result, in these countries, I then take that opportunity to meet with sometimes head of states or the ministers, but also create that platform where even the young citizens can have conversations with their policymakers, which I think is very important. At the African Union, the head of states champion various initiatives where they are report back to their peers as head of state. So for instance, the president of Ghana is the champion for Africa for financial institutions. And therefore, when it comes to anything to do with, funding mechanisms across Africa, he's on the forefront and he reports back on that. But we didn't have a champion on youth. So one of the things we advocated for that we also now need a president who's an official champion for youth, who in every African Union meeting has to report back on the status of youth and also had to advocate and influence the other head of states. So officially, as of the meeting, the AU annual summit that happened in February, we now have a champion, president champion for youth that I also get to work closely with, or when I'm facing hurdles or we need to push something, we go through that president to get to the rest of the head of states too. So that's just what I'll say in summary. Finally, I'll say I think political participation of young people is very, very crucial. And I say this because we really need more young people in leadership positions. We really, really need to do more. In as much as, yes, I have this position to advocate, but we need more young people in that decision-making table. And often when I have discussions with young people, what comes out the most is, this is not for us. We've just not seen a great example of political leadership. And there's lots of intimidation, to name a few. But if we don't do it, then who's going to do it? I'll give you a specific example of my country where we just finish elections and, looking at the statistics, about 2 million people that registered to vote did not vote. And majority of those people are young people. And we are the ones that are loudest making noise. And in as much as we're making noise for the change you want to see, we don't want to be the ones to be in leadership positions to make the change. So that's another thing I'm advocating for. Actually, in fact, just before this meeting, one of my bilateral meetings we're having was just to see how do we form an alliance and how do we actually empower. It's something, actually, funny enough, when I was a Mandela Washington Fellow in 2016, I was a banker, and now I've just moved into this public office role. It was also inspired by my peers, being a Dartmouth A2C, being part of the program. But it also made me realize that we need to do more. And now I have this passion to really do more. How do we train more young people for political positions? How do we empower them? How do we build their capacity? How do we even fund them? Because resources is such a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge across all board. Every young person you talk to, access to funding for young people. And as a result of lack of access to funding, at times it results in us being in competition than collaboration, because there's not so much in the pool. I get to see myself even in my own position, where you're trying to advocate for various stuff, but then you find that at times they're completing priorities. At the same time, they are completing priorities for us as youth leaders ourselves. So we need to also walk the talk. Let us stand in collaboration. Let us speak in one voice. Let us also make sure that, and as much as we advocate for change, we become the leaders that will also make the change for now and for tomorrow. If you may allow me to, thank you. If you may allow me to just quickly sneak out, I'm so sorry I have to do this. I was really hoping I'll get to interact with the fellow alumni, but hopefully we can do it on the sidelines. I'm still here until the 28th of September, so hopefully there's a way that we can engage and talk. But thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure, because this is my family really, and the support that I've also received just within my role has come significantly as well from the US government and from the Mandela Washington Fellowship alumni community. Thank you, thank you.
Well, I don't think there's much more that I can say after that. I'd like to just thank Chido Mpemba as she heads out the door. Thank you so much for being here. She has always been, since becoming an alumna of the program, she remains very involved and is always reaching out to the alumni community. So please, we encourage you to reach out to her. On that note, I'd like to say to the panelists, we're at the end of our program. And since Chini was organizing the caterer, I'd like to say on behalf of the Africa Center, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this afternoon. On behalf of IREX, on behalf of the Department of State. I'd like to actually acknowledge someone. I hope she's okay with me acknowledging her. Desiree Cormier-Smith, a special guest from the Department of State, is with us in a fabulous red suit. And Desiree is the special representative for racial equity and justice. So very critical role within the Department of State. Thank you so much for making time today to join us. On that note, I'd like to also give a round of applause to all our panelists. Thank you so much. Yes, I know there are questions from the audience. We will have some light refreshments and networking, and we encourage you to interact with everyone and have the questions answered then. But we have to begin. You can answer it as, yes.
I did not
You'd like
answer.
to answer? Okay.
Yeah, okay. No
So
problem.
on that note, I will hand back over to you, but the refreshments will be out shortly. Thank you so much.
No problem. Doctor, to answer to your questions, of course, we do have case of refugee of disaster and flooding in Mali. But unfortunately, the project I currently work in does not have a budget line to finance those kind of disasters. So what we do when we got this kind of alert from the government, we refer it to our mailing list because we have NGOs who work on that domain. So we have a mailing list and we share it with everyone if there is someone who have a budget line to assist those refugees. But our funding actually with USAID is to assist the people from the war. Anytime there is a population movement because of the war, we assist them. But till now, we don't have a budget line to assist them on the flooding and natural disaster. Yeah.
I think you can continue the conversation in person. We do have some refreshments at the back and also online for those who are joining us on Facebook. And also you can connect it with the fellows, with each other. But thank you again. One note for all alumni, please continue to remain connected to the fellowship. We have a very, very active alumni community, and we encourage you to read about what we have available for you on social media. Oh. Yes.
Every day, everything, high spirits. I sit there go on with whatever I repeat.
Home isn't just where we're from. It's the sounds that move us. The stories that shape us. And the flavors that heal us. It's the communities that connect us. The ones that hold us down. The ones that raise us up. Home is a feeling we all know. So if you're looking for it, you can always find it here. The Africa Center. Home is here.